Libya very early on expressed interest in WTO accession, and as far as I know, that is no longer a priority of Libya. So I think that it's going to be a very slow process. I think that it will, some of the sort of precursors to be able to focus on benchmarks to open trade are going to be basically rule of law. The number of laws in the commercial sector that have changed just in 2010, I think, is very substantial. I think the rule of law and the expansion of the judiciary and the raising the standards of the judiciary in Libya will be part of that. I think efforts first to look at arbitration as opposed to putting other standards in place. It's very basic at this point. I want to recognize Maram Talat from the Department of Commerce, who manages the commercial law development program for Libya, and it's amazing some of the work that she's doing that's very basic, but also is very welcomed both by the U.S. government and by the Libyan government. So that's, I guess, the best I can answer.
I have a question in the back here, Mr. Lee.
Hello, I'm Leon Weintraub, University of Wisconsin. I'd like to ask Ambassador Mack a question. The society you described sounded quite similar to me of that we see in Venezuela. Personalized one-man rule, subsidized welfare state, kind of a social type of contract between the government and its people as we'll throw enough money at your specific identified problems as long as you allow us, your unelected leaders, to make the important decisions with very little representation and input from you. Is this going to come under strain? I mean, how long can this last, particularly if there is a problem with future revenues of oil, or as the society gets more educated, how long is this kind of social contract going to be acceptable?
That's a very, very good question, Professor, and I'm really short of having a good answer to it. I think that inevitably, at some point, a sort of rentier state social contract can't be indefinitely sustained. On the other hand, there's a lot of countries in the Arabian Peninsula that have been doing it for a long time fairly successfully and without the brutality that has accompanied this in Venezuela and occasionally also in Libya. So I'm just not sure, and I guess I have the sort of standard American view of this, which is that they ought to try to do both. They ought to open up political space and make progress in that direction at the same time as they are trying to care for the needs of their citizens. If you've got the oil resources and revenue to do it, why not? And I recognize that very often governments that are have this relationship with their people don't feel under any pressure to provide any political openings, so it's a tough sell.
My name is Ann Townsend, and my organization is the Trust for Museum Exhibitions, soon to be the Museum Exchange. And I went to Libya in 2005, took with me an archaeologist from the Louvre and two from the University of Pennsylvania, and of course was bowled over by the archaeological sites. I mean, they are just unequaled. And I was determined, my organization is devoted to cultural diplomacy and international cultural exchange, and I decided that we just had to have a wonderful archaeological exhibit traveling the world. What better could Libya do for cultural relations with the entire world than that? Well, that didn't get off the ground. I did a proposal, but what did surface was this exhibition. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. Saif Gaddafi's, he thinks he's an artist. Somehow he got things wrong, I guess. So the exhibition was to consist, or does consist, of about 3/4 of his personal works, 6 works from other Libyan artists, and a group of archaeological pieces, some quite good, some dreadful, not the really creme de la creme stuff. So I guess the Libyans here in Washington didn't know anybody else who'd been involved in museum work in Libya, so they called me and asked me if I would organize an American viewing of this exhibition, which had created quite a stir around the world. It was opened by the King and Queen of Spain in Spain. It was opened by the brother of the emperor in Japan. It was at the Musée du Monde Arabe in Paris, not because of its quality, but for obvious reasons, economic and political. So we tried to get going on it. First they wanted it in Washington. When I got it organized in Washington, they wanted it in New York. Then when I got it organized in one place in New York, they seemed to think that things like this can happen in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. You can get the whole thing organized.
There are other questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, the long and the short of it was that their immunity from seizure was not granted, and Gaddafi spoke at the UN, and that went down the drain. And I just wonder how serious Libya is about any sort of cultural diplomacy or cultural, because I've been working on this for 5 years and have gotten nowhere.